What's up, guys? It's Chris. Welcome to HP Ninjas and greetings from my kitchen floor. Okay, so Jesus Christ. I guess I haven't. I have never. I know I haven't. I've never made a specific video on this, and I guess that I have talked about it sometimes before, but I guess now I can touch on it a little bit more detail. It still shouldn't take too long, I guess. But so orientation and limitations of a log manifold. So the whole idea, the great idea for a Honda build, because it's rare that you find Hondas nowadays, or at least the older '90s ones, with AC. Most AC's been yanked out because it's just easier to swap and not deal with that shit. Or as AC parts fail over time, people just eliminate them. So, but anyway, if you get one of those Jewel type Hondas where you have AC and you want to keep it, but you want to do boost, you can do that. Now, the thing is people think that maybe you can't really make big power and have AC. Well, this is something I talked about a long time ago, but there was a guy with a CSS Integra, CSS built block Integra that was making 700 plus, maybe even 800. I know for a fact it was at least 700 horsepower with it, and still had AC. Now, I'm not saying he was running a log manifold, but there are setups out there that you can buy that'll be able to squeeze the AC compressor in there still, right there, right. I'm pretty sure he just had a top mount, right? He had a top mount tubular manifold, and it was able to squeeze that in there. Now, I would imagine that most top mount manifolds would allow clearance for that, even with a bigger turbo, because the turbo sits up top. So the big thing is the turbo housing getting in the way of the compressor, right? Now, the reason why I'm saying, okay, so let me carry on with that a little bit. Now, is there a set number of power limit that you can make on a log manifold? Now, I've like to say that if I'm planning to go above 500 horsepower to ditch the log manifold for something tubular, but it doesn't mean that you have to. Now, like I said about a bunch of different things, like I talked about with the non-VTEC going over 500 horsepower. Yes, you can do it, but it's just easier if you use different kind of mods, right? Just like VTEC is free power, a better flowing manifold is free power. Now, there was something I shared on my page, on my Facebook page not too long ago. That was this year. It was from Durf Tuning. It was one of Durf's pictures. He had the exact same tune. He just switched from a log I'm not even sure if it was a log manifold, but I know he switched manifolds. He went from one manifold to another with an upgrade, and I think it was 40 or 60 wheel horsepower he freed up just from a manifold swap. So that just goes to show the amount of power you can free up in a tune if you're getting rid of that restrictive log manifold and going with something better. Now, because of the fact that you're doing force induction and boost, I think that you can still take it quite a bit further than 500 horsepower on a log manifold still. It's just not as easy, and I would imagine that eventually you would hit a ceiling mark where you're just not going to make too much more power with that manifold. So there's that to consider. So is there a set limitation on where your log manifold is going to take you? No. Can I tell you anything? Can I tell you for sure what the number is? No. It's just guesstimations, right? Most of the times when I'm telling you things on here, it's just loose guesstimates, right? Guesstimates based on other builds I've seen, guesstimates on builds I've done before, things like that, where you find a commonality, in the numbers. So when you hit me up and you ask me, hey, can I do this? And like you want a specific answer, can I do this for sure? A lot of times I can't give you that because, me telling you that isn't gospel. It's not God's given word to me. It's, do I think it can do it? And then I will tell you a lot of times, yes, I think it will, or no, I think it won't. But it's getting to the point sometimes now where I just don't even want to answer those kind of questions, because then what happens if you do some shit like that and you come back and it doesn't come back, it comes back on me like, oh, bro, you said it could do this, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Well, there's a lot of things that factor into that. The tuning, the tuner, there's just a lot of different things. There's so many different things that factor into anything when you're doing shit with cars. Now, if you're curious as to why I'm sitting here facing the fucking engine block, it's because it comes to the second part of what I want to talk about, and that is orientation, right? So the other day, I got to poking around out of curiosity to see if there was a top mount log manifold, and there actually is, and it's the same price as a regular, down drop orientated fucking log manifold. So that's cool to see there. So you have the log manifold is really short and fat, and it stays up top. It says real close to the head, doesn't really dangle down. It's really only the turbo that drops down, right? So if you're flipping that and you're doing it on top mount, then the only thing that comes down is the wastegate, and your wastegate's usually going to just be right around right here. So that's kind of cool. That's something I wouldn't mind buying later on down the line and trying out. And then there goes to orientation for the log manifold, right? Because we've seen power limitations. Now, this is the reason right here that I want to show you. This is the reason why I'm filming the block. Now, this was done very shittily. This was a very shitty cut. And I actually got this engine. This was actually going to be Roger's engine block. But I decided not to sell it to him, not to send it to him, not because I was scared it was going to fail or not work or anything like that. It's just that the guy was paying top dollar, and I didn't want him to get something that was going to be ugly. So this is probably going to want to be a block that I use for myself, just because unless, I don't know, man, I might be willing to sell this under certain circumstances, I guess, or whatnot. Although I have 2 B18 builds I want to do, and B18 blocks are in a short supply nowadays, so I'll probably want to keep this for me. This will probably wind up being my Tron block. But anyway, okay, so typically you have your turbo, your manifold right here, and you got a turbo come down, and then you got your intake side will be sitting over here, and the intake side smacking the AC compressor is what usually is a problem, right? The exhaust housing side usually isn't so big, so all you gotta do is turn your fucking turbo. So what happens is they had a turbo that was too big to fit here, right? Because you see this fin right here, and then you can see where that fin was chopped up, and they went a little bit hardcore on the grinder and they cut into the fucking bell housing. But like I said, this is a really shitty job. This might be something that if I go to decide to use, I might try and massage it down a little bit just to straighten up and get all these jagged edges off of it. But no, I don't foresee this being any kind of problem to run. It's just an ugly scar up job just because somebody was being lazy. So this is a stock block, but clearly somebody was running boost on this fucking stock block. Anyway, this is a rod knock block. I mean, I haven't opened it to see exactly the damage done, but I bought this with the understanding that this block was knocking, so I'm imagining that crankshaft is chewed up. But anyway, so yeah, if you buy a turbo and it's too fat and even if you got a log manifold and the turbo is still too big and it's still interfering with the compressor, you can flip the orientation of the turbos where it's facing the other way. Now, I guess the downside to that is whereas normally the turbo would be coming down right here and you would have your loop around piece of intercooler pipe and then it runs to the intercooler. Now, instead of running it like this and being short, you got to run it from a little bit further. So you need a whole, probably an extra good foot of turnaround pipe. So that's something that you could probably order separately, or maybe you just have to get a different kit, or maybe you have to get custom fabricated, but it's not that big a deal. I'm pretty sure you can find a guy that will weld you some extra piping on there. Or I guess there's another way you can do it. One time I did it a long time ago, which I wasn't really a fan of, but I did it out of necessity. You can run, if you're running a half-size radiator, you can run the turbo directly into the intercooler. So you just cock the intercooler a little bit further to the side, and you have like just a rubber or silicone piece that goes straight to the intercooler, or maybe a small pipe that will go around. Anyway, there's multiple ways to run turbo kits. And so that's why, like, a lot of times when people ask me to show like an instructional video to how to install a kit, it's really super basic. It's really basic. It's like Lego pieces. You put this piece here, and that piece here, run it to the intercooler, and that piece of turbo to the intercooler. It's really, really super fucking basic. It's not very hard at all. And sometimes you just got to get a little bit creative on how you're going to run pipes and whatnot. But anyway, yeah, that's I guess my discussion on log manifolds in a nutshell. And also, just goes to show, if you ever buy an engine block and you want to know like why the fuck shit's cut up on this side, that's because I blocked it and boosted, and that's where they were. That's just the way they had the turbo facing. The housing was smacking into this with the piece there, and they needed to cut it to make clearance for the turbo. All right, guys. So hope that was helpful, and thanks for watching. Peace.